Yeah, I do have. Or, yeah. That's it.
All right, we are live down at the mill. It's Lake Stevens City Council. We're gonna have a workshop tonight. It's October 15th, 2024, 6 o'clock, and we are recording this workshop, and it will later be published on our YouTube site. So with that, Gary, you okay if I run the meeting from here?
Yeah, certainly. That'd be great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and let's kick it off with discussion item 1A or 2A, stormwater fee review. Shannon.
I can figure out how to share this. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shannon Front. I'm the surface water manager for the city. Tonight, I'm stormwater rate review. This is a topic that we've discussed at several other council meetings. And I want to go over today with where are we today? What are we proposing moving forward for the next couple of years? What do those recommended rate jurisdictions? And then I'd like to open it up for some more discussion. So where we're at today, as a reminder, in 2018, the city of Lake Stevens went through a comprehensive rate study for the stormwater utility fees, set rates through 2024. So the rates that you can see here in our fee schedule, they go through 2024 and they're at $265 per ESU. To date, we've done an inventory and inspection, still working on looking at condition inventory for all of our stormwater pipe infrastructure. And that's something that we started this year and we have planned for subsequent years. And then another topic of discussion that we've spent some more time on is really talking about how do we bring private stormwater facilities into compliance. These are typically facilities of homeowners associations propose a program with this new rates that we're going to be proposing into compliance while also balancing the rates for the rest of the public. So when I talk about level of service in 2018, the city adopted a level of service 3. That was the level of service proposed in the rate study. And what that included was the NPDES program, essentially maintain that. We'll continue with our NPDES programs, our lake management programs, the 6-year CIP projects that we've identified to date, and assessment. This is TDing all of our stormwater pipes, and that's something that we started to manage private stormwater facilities, and how are we going to try to bring them into compliance. So I'm going to go into depth with each of these just to let you know what each of these levels of service would look like. So our NPDES permit, we just entered into a new permit this year. There's not much that has changed, but there are some more requirements that we plan to have continue with monthly water quality sampling as part of our lake management program, annual alum treatment evaluation as part of our lake management program, and also addressing aquatic vegetation. We don't anticipate any of that changing, basically staying status quo. This is a list of our 6-year CIP. We have identified here the majority of the projects associated with the Lower Stevens Creek Restoration Project. That's something that Olin will talk about a little bit later today about where we're at with that project. And the majority of these projects, we do anticipate receiving grant funding to help with the cost of them. And then this may be a little bit different order in your packet. I realized some of the slides got mixed up, and so I had switched them. But this other piece of information is the stormwater condition assessment. This is looking at all of our stormwater pipes and catch basins. This is something that really hasn't been done, and we started it this year. We completed 14 miles this year. We received a grant to continue this project for next year and in 2026, and we anticipate doing 30 more miles with the grant money. And this is really allowing us to see what is the condition of our stormwater pipes and how are we going to evaluate the information that we get of all the deficiencies and plan for future capital projects. One of the other things that we plan to start in 25 is also to look at all of our culverts. And then again, we've already inspected and maintained all of our public stormwater facilities and catch basins, and we've inspected all of the private ones. That's something that we do annually as well. Stormwater facilities. How do we bring these facilities into compliance? One of the big questions we heard at previous council meetings was, if we raise all the rates and the city takes over the maintenance for those, how does that impact everyone else? How does that impact the people that are paying HOA dues? And so it's really a bit of a tricky situation. One mechanism that we have that's already included in our municipal code under 11.06.080 is the city can evaluate private stormwater facilities. We can work with the homeowners to try to get them to come into compliance on their own. And if we're not able to achieve kind of voluntary type compliance, then the city could go in and maintain those. This may look like something of a process, as I just explained. We call assistance, come up with the criteria to determine how are we prioritizing the ones that we're going to go maintain first, and allow, give the opportunity for people to come into compliance. And then if the city does do the maintenance, collect the costs for that. So just an overview, I'll just touch again on, we have approximately 167 private residential facilities. And the reason I pull out residential is the commercial facilities, we generally don't have many challenges trying to bring them into compliance. We usually don't have a challenge with those neighborhoods that also have HOAs. And so if you look at how we've evaluated which ones have HOAs or not, the majority of the facilities that we've inspected do seem to have an HOA. And it's really the ones that are challenging that don't have the HOA in place. The majority of those private facilities do need some level of maintenance. This figure here doesn't really show you the scale of maintenance. It could be as just minor as vegetation maintenance or as major as needing to reconstruct a vault wall. And so I just want to just highlight a real quick example here. This is one that we have inspected before. We've contacted the homeowners. We've done some pretty extensive communication with the homeowners. We've brought in the conservation district to provide technical assistance. And to date, this pond has still not been maintained. This is, you can tell it doesn't look much like a detention pond. It's very heavily overgrown. There's approximately 34 homeowners. Well, there are 34 homeowners within this Evergreen Court subdivision. And the estimated maintenance for this pond is roughly $25,000. And so then bill the homeowners there.
So Shannon, I got a question about that.
Yeah.
So we say we have 34 homeowners in there. I guess we go by the plat and all that, when the stormwater plans that were back at that time when it was built in, so we know exactly which ones are actually feeding that stormwater.
Correct. So it does go by the plat. That's a really great question. So when we look at the plat language, and I can always provide a follow-up example of what that plat language looks like. The plat language will say that the stormwater facility, to some effect, is dedicated to the homeowners, and they have 1/34 responsibility for maintenance of that facility. And so it's those 34 homeowners that are then utilizing that facility. And that language is there written on the face.
But there's no,
It's the ones in the plat. So there may be specific homeowners. As you can see here on this example, there's tract 998 and there's tract 999. I can show you with my mouse. This is the larger pond here of the images that you're seeing. And then this is a small swale over here. There may be homeowners that are only contributing to this swale, while the majority may be contributing to this one. But it is looked at as a collective unit, as that those two facilities were built to serve that subdivision.
okay, thank you.
Mhm. So here's really what we're recommending. From the 2018 study, the rates that were included in that study through 2024 increased at a rate of 3% per year. We're proposing to just hold that rate increase of 3% a year through 2027. Work on building a program to bring these stormwater facilities into compliance, as I mentioned before, through city maintenance and billing individual homeowners. Evaluate that program and see how is that working, or do we need to look more towards other options? We're also in a position where the county has done a majority of the stormwater utility fee processing. They've also done all of the analysis for impervious surface for our multifamily and commercial. And that whole process is coming over to the city starting in 2025. The county will no longer be providing those services. They will still be billing. They'll still be billing on the tax statements. We will just need to provide them the information that needs to be billed. And so there's really an opportunity for us to have improvements and things that maybe aren't being utilized correctly or evaluated correctly. And so it's something that we need to do, I think, before we can truly assess how many ESUs we have in the city and what our rates should be.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
On this example at Evergreen Court, when was that plat brought into fruition?
10
Don't quote me
years.
on that, yeah.
Say you just did the last 10 years, you're looking at if they would have fixed this and taken care of it the way, $7.65 a month for a 10-year period.
Yeah,
That's all they would have had to pay per month was $7.65 to cover that, and it wouldn't be as expensive had they not let it go for 20 years per se.
yeah.
So if you do it over 15, that number goes significantly down. So my biggest thing is like, if we can bill them back for this, because they've let it neglect for so long, capturing all those funds from the idea of billing back the homeowners for that.
Okay, thank you.
So Shannon, where in the city is this? Is this an
Off
annexed
8th
area?
Street,
Off 8th Street?
yeah, 8th and 87th, over map too, and show you.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Me just skip here.
Isn't that over by the junior high, down the street from the junior high? if you
Yeah,
go
it's like
Yeah.
across the
Westwards
street
junior
there.
high.
It's just right, power lines and 8th
Okay.
on the north side.
Yeah. Let's see. So this is, let me just orient you here. So we have Highway 9 here, we have Skyline Elementary over here in the middle school. And then this is 8th Street here, and then 87th runs north to south here, and here is the power lines. So this is it right here. Some of the challenges that we've been having with this one is actually the homeowners located here on 85th, their backyards back up to this pond. There has been some challenges with that, maybe excess water spilling into the backyards here of these homes. There's actually a concrete wall that lines this pond that may have a couple cracks and things in it that would need to get in the sense of releasing more water from this pond so it doesn't get too full, and actually check periodically just to make sure that it doesn't spill over into these homes here.
Shannon, quick question for you. And maybe I missed this, but have we reached and said kind of, there needs to be some maintenance to take place in this? Has there been a
There
discussion?
has,
with
yeah. The
neighbors,
discussion
or-
took place a year or two ago, Conservation District of Detention Pond Maintenance. You may recall, we did a process 2 years ago that we put little signs that linked you to some videos on what is it, why do you have it, how to maintain it. We've also done kind of workshops with partnering with the Conservation District to come in and how do you maintain this? Let us show you how to do it. So inspection was in response to one of the complaints from the homeowners on the other side. We did the inspection. We contacted all of the homeowners. We've had several on-site. Why does it need to be maintained? What's important about that? We've had the Conservation District come in as kind of a neutral party to be able to provide there. To date, there hasn't been any
So,
maintenance.
so the response to those residents has been not our problem type response, or are they just refusing to acknowledge the obligation to maintain it?
Yeah, it's primarily along those lines. It's the challenge that this pond has been around since the late 90s. And this homeowners association likely dissolved pretty close after it was formed. And it's just not aware that that pond was anybody's responsibility. We did hear from the homeowners that they had water all the way up to their yards, at some points, and just not really realizing that that was something that they needed to maintain and were responsible for. And there was quite a bit of pushback, I think, as we could possibly assume, when you find out that this is something that's been the responsibility, and to Marcus's point, that this is now a much larger
So
project.
even though these folks have realized we've got water issues, things of that sort, they're still not willing to do anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, and really the challenge that we've heard from them specifically is, how are we supposed to collectively get all 34 of our neighbors on board? There's actually, didn't send me a bill for my portion.
Wow.
Because, for them to kind of active plan and somebody pushing a homeowners association. And I think that, and so, some responses have been, great, go do it and just send me a bill for my portion of it, because that's all I want to be responsible for. But, organizing.
And they're,
Yeah.
to that point that they don't want an HOA and they don't want to necessarily do anything about it. The expense of $26,000, is that including a new concrete wall? Or is it just the cleanup of the?
It was evaluated. The way that we came up with those estimates is we looked at and then we looked at comparable activities done on our own from our city staff, and then equated that amount to time and equipment that would take to maintain these ones.
Because 26,000,
Not be a full concrete wall, it may be
Sure.
some sort of a patch, but I think the big thing is just to get a lot of that vegetation out of there.
Right.
So just to kind of sum it up here, whoops. We do realize that a much more comprehensive rate study does need to happen, more so than what we've likely looked at to date. There's the evaluation of this private stormwater program that we're proposing to you tonight. There's also the information that we anticipate gaining from the infrastructure condition assessment. That's really going to give us a leg, and are there probably some more capital projects or older infrastructure. And so we are proposing to repeat to account here in 26 and 27, which would then set the new rates. So that's kind of just what I spoke about. This larger comprehensive rate study, the goals, infrastructure repairs that we need, any additional capital equipment, our new NPDES programs, our stormwater utility fee processing programs, and evaluate staffing, and then also evaluate future needs for stormwater retrofits and regional stormwater facility. We hope to gain from a much more comprehensive rate study. Those are the kind of goals of things that we'd want to include in it.
I have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
We talked about people who have single family residential units who are not part of, like, they retain all about billing them and maybe doing like a credit back type thing. Have we landed somewhere for that?
Yeah, so we have not landed on that. There is part of a kind of collective benefit, though, for those individuals that are paying into a system. I mean, you're paying for the system for the roads that you drive on, the stormwater management for that, the NPDES to benefit to living in the city and managing the stormwater for those residents that, you know, maintain all of the stormwater on their property. We have not, one thing that we were discussing in earlier conversations was kind of looking at a credit system. And that was if we were going to possibly take on all of the maintenance. And then for those that did their, that's probably pretty administratively heavy. And so we would want to really look at what does that look like if we want to move forward with that. And I think that maybe we do look at a couple of those scenarios in a much more comprehensive study. We just want to make sure we're including not just the private stormwater maintenance, but also these other components.
As a city to do it, but a homeowners association who's actively keeping up with it probably could find, theoretically, if they're going contractors, a better price. Theoretically speaking, maintaining it well, getting it done regularly, having that done. So every 2 years, something that says, hey, we've performed our maintenance and send the receipts in.
I mean, I would love for us to get to that because we actually have a requirement to inspect them every year. And so if we already know that they're inspecting and maintaining, yes, I would love that. But when you're talking specifically about the rates, which is essentially a collective rate for everybody, it's the rate that everyone pays to be part of the city and for the city to manage stormwater and lake management. We're talking about private stormwater facility maintenance. Under this model, it would be that kind of cumulative collective benefit rate, but they're going to pay in addition for the maintenance of their facility if the city needs to go in and maintain it. Of course, they could collectively get together and they could hire someone to do it just as an HOA does already. We may want to, something we may want to consider in that model of we decide in the future that the right move is to actually raise rates substantially and take over the maintenance of these facilities. And then that may be something, a credit model that we would want to look into then. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I completely understand charging a homeowner with single family who's not part of it, part of a collective fee to take care of the lake and everything along those lines. They do their own. But I do believe that you're correct when you say collectively, everyone gets the benefit of it.
And that's what we're proposing that's why we're proposing to start with this, because it really does, it somewhat isolates those that is specific to the city stepping in and performing maintenance for individuals to pay for that maintenance and not everybody to pay for that when possible site, or they already have an active HOA, or they're homeowners that have already gotten together and decided to maintain their facility on their own.
So Shannon, it occurs to me that there's probably some properties in Lake Stevens, quite a few actually, that do not have any stormwater facilities at all, keeping stormwater on their properties. I can think of one in particular. Is there something that we're going to need to do about those at any time?
No, there's nothing. Those are usually older homes, usually ones on larger lots. The stormwater in place for them is typically along the lines of like
Going into Stevens Creek
or dispersion, but
going into Stevens Creek.
Yeah, there's but yeah, so there's nothing that we need to do for those. It would the stormwater would we would implement more of a stormwater management typically when those larger lots start to develop into higher density. And then that's where current codes come into play for stormwater management.
Okay.
But there's no requirement for us to go in and do any kind of like mitigation for those ones. It's already managed on their site.
I guess, Shannon, I get a couple things. It's really impressive, the work that you and your team are doing as far as managing. That's a really, really huge win for the community and for you and your team. So thank you for that. And I appreciate all the thoughtfulness, everything that we've asked you for. So for me, I would like to see the ones that are most significantly out of compliance and that pose the greatest risk to our stormwater quality. And then address those kind of in a systematic fashion. And then see how it goes with us. For example, we build them and see what kind of compliance we get for the billing of those people, and then approach it as we do that incrementally and thoughtfully. We can kind of adjust as we go along instead of saying, hey, let's go nail 12 of these ones that are out of compliance and rush in and try and do that. Because I see how deliberate and how thoughtful that you and your team have been. And so I think that we can approach it in a manner like that and see what kind of compliance we can get.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. We also agree with that and a criteria. And so that we're very thoughtful on which one do we pick first, essentially. We want to make sure that the reason why we do it, we have good reasoning and justification.
I guess one other question is, you mentioned you have the staffing and equipment to effectively carry out that work for your staff members so they're able to be efficient in the work that they're doing.
I believe so. Maintaining some of these ones that haven't been maintained in a while to truly be able to evaluate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Robot slope mower. It's great.
Second slope mower. I mean, so really what I'm requesting from council tonight is just if I can just kind of get some concurrence that this is the model that we want to move forward with. What we'll do is bring back several other staff members are working on some additional fee updates, and we would bring these rates, which are here, included in that fee resolution. And you may note here, we are not proposing to change the lakefront and the lakefront split lot that's in our current fee schedule. We're not proposing to change those rates.
Those are exempt from the 3% adjustment.
Correct. They were never in the 3% model in the original rate study. And so we're proposing to just hold them as is, as we see how the maintenance has impacted our water quality, and we really start to look at how often do we need to treat with alum. I mean, as you mentioned, we're on our second year now that we haven't needed to treat, and so we're just going to continue to evaluate that a little longer.
And I guess another question. So I think you mentioned previously of like 6,500 catch basins in the city, and there's a maintenance plan for each of those. How long have we had that type of maintenance plan in place? Because has it been something that's happened fairly recently, or has this been ongoing for many years?
Ongoing for many years.
Okay.
It's a requirement that's in our NPDES permit. I will give a shout out to our stormwater operations team because they've worked really hard over the last 2 years to bring our whole city into compliance with that standard in our NPDES permit, and they've done an awesome job at it. And we're seeing the impacts of it every winter. We're seeing the water quality improvement, and so it's been a big lift, but they have a good program going now.
Good. That's excellent to hear.
So I'm happy to bring anything back for further discussion, but if there are no other further discussion items, what I do plan to do is bring back to you an updated fee resolution that would adopt the next 3 years of stormwater utility fees per ESU.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, just one comment. I would concur with the council member you in regards to these systems that are out of compliance, rather than take the strong hand, I guess, and so penalize them, work with them, and try to find the most detrimental system, I guess, to the overall system, and start working with those and kind of whittle our way down the process there.
Yep. Thank you for that.
So I guess my only feedback on that would be how we define detrimental. because there's the overall system, but then when I hear stories about water seeping into a neighbor's backyard as we're heading into fall and winter, that type of thing is particularly concerning to me, when people are kind of at the mercy of a group of homeowners who aren't doing anything. So I guess my feedback would be to maybe take an extra close look at those and make sure we're not setting anyone up for some kind of damage over this coming winter season.
Absolutely.
Anything else for Shannon? Great. I will say, last week I accompanied Shannon, or I met with Shannon down in Portland. There was a Oregon and Washington Lake Conference. It was very informative to me, and part of that conference was a presentation on Lake Stevens and how clean it is and how well it's being taken care of. So kudos to her team for doing a great job.
you.
All right, Sarah, let's talk boat launch pastimes.
Right, let me get to sharing my screen here. And I'm just waiting it for populating up on your screen. Caitlin, it says that I'm sharing on the back stage, but it doesn't look like it's. Into. Sorry for the delay here.
Is that a shameless plug? Yeah.
Oh, I thought I caught you there.
All right, Sarah, ready?
I'm ready. Yes,
Let's
thank
do
you.
it.
Sorry for the delay, council. We are here to talk about boat launch pass types that are accepted at the 2 boat launches here at the City of Lake Stevens. We have North Cove as well as Davies Beach, as everybody in this city should well know, being a lake town. On the screen and in the packet, I have broken down the types of passes that are allowed at each of the 2 boat launches. And they are not the same. It is quite confusing for the public and a lot for us to advertise. And I thought it was time to bring it forth, give it a review, and see if any changes were desired by the council. What you can see here is that the city has our own annual pass. It's on a rotating 12-month rotation. So if you buy it in July, it expires the next July. That pass is $75. When you visit Davies Beach, you are allowed to pay for 2-hour blocks of time. However, that option is not currently available at North Cove. If that is desired, I would have to look at our kiosk to see if our kiosk is capable of doing that, as they are 2 different kiosks. When you visit North Cove, you're able to use a vehicle access pass. The vehicle access pass is issued by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. This is when you buy an angler's license or a hunter's license. It is meant to access the water and those lands for that type of license. This type of pass is required by the agreement that we have with Fish and Wildlife. The city does not own the parking or the actual boat launch. That tax parcel is owned by the state, and we have an agreement to operate it. So that one we cannot eliminate unless we open up an agreement and really dive into that. But it seems to be a great pass and is one that this department is recommending that we continue. When you go to North Cove, you can also use a Discover Pass. I'm not quite sure when we started accepting that, but I believe I was told that might have been around 2020. The Discover Pass is a $30 annual pass that you buy from the state parks in order to access their parks and open spaces. With that, I would recommend that we no longer accept that pass as access to the North Cove boat launch, as it really undercuts our prices for our annual pass. The city does not receive any revenue from those, and we are not obligated by any agreement to continue to accept them. Both of our locations do accept the Disabled Veterans Lifetime Pass card that is issued through Washington State. That is given to all veterans who have a 30% or higher service-connected disability. We have very few of those passes come through from our staff reports, although we don't have a great way of tracking that. That one I have no recommendation on, and just have it here as a discussion in case there was a discussion that the council wanted to have around it. Again, that one is accepted at both locations. And then the last annual pass that is accepted is at Davies Beach. We are still accepting the Snohomish County Annual Access and Launch Pass. That pass is $75, although the city does not see any revenue for that pass at the location. That agreement is written into when Davies Beach management and ownership was acquired by the city. Prior, that was owned and managed by the county. With the agreement, it just writes that we will continue to accept that pass until we otherwise agree. So if it's the council desire to stop taking that pass at Davies, we would set up a meeting with the county to tell them that, hey, it's been 4 years at this time. We're not receiving revenues, and we do have expenses that we have for the location. Moving forward through the slides, I just have a little information. Pass example types, what they look like in case anybody is curious. We have our pass on the bottom left, the Discover Pass here in the top left. Center bottom is clearly that Disabled Veterans Pass. Top right would be the Vehicle Access Pass from Fish and Wildlife, and then the County Pass. I do have some numbers. You may be curious about how many people use our facilities. This is data from the kiosks itself. This is a combination of both North Cove and Davies. In the following slide, I do have it broken down by location. This slide I did not include in your packet, but I am happy to email it out if you want to look at these numbers further. The numbers from 2024, you'll see through the slides, are grayed out past July. And that's because the data wasn't complete at the time I compiled this record. We'll have to go in and pull the rest of the numbers for 2024. The small boxes that say date as of July for comparison, that's an apples for apples July completion so that you can see where we were at the midpoint through the year. Our numbers for 2024 are closely tracking what we were doing in 2022. We saw a slight increase in 2023 from the date of when these records were pulled. Essentially, at the kiosk, we sell 108 passes in 2022, and that was the same number as of July 2024. There are other ways to buy passes, such as our online site or by walking into our office. I did not include those numbers here, as this is about activity that occurs once you're on the site. Total revenue day passes, that was $56,000 in 2023. How many vehicles visited the site? In 2023, it was 9,495. It's about a 50-50 split on who pays the $10 fee to stay all day versus who pays that 2-hour block. Of course, if they want to stay more than 2 hours, they have to come back at the end of 2 hours to pay an additional 2 hours. It doesn't give the option to just do all 4 hours at the same time.
Why is that?
It's the way that the kiosk is set up, where it's a ticket being printed now and it's valid for 2 hours. If we were interested in looking at 2 or 4 hour options, that is something I could look into to see if the kiosk is capable of doing it.
It seemed to make sense. I mean, if someone said they want 4 hours, that they have that option available if the technology supports it.
I can absolutely look into that before we bring back the fee proposals that were discussed last week for adoption, and that way you know what your options are.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with an email.
I would be for canceling the Snohomish County all parks, so that way we get a portion of it.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
same thing with the Discover Pass. I support the city's recommendation. I think one thing that I thought was intriguing, we got some feedback from a citizen on, recommendation for incentivizing Lake Stevens residents and having a lesser charge. And so that was something that was intriguing to me. And I thought that was worth exploring, looking at the annual pass. And I don't know if there's any way of tracking who's in the city and out of the city, but that might be a mechanism to figure that out. But I would be supportive of having incentivizing Lake Stevens residents having a lower fee schedule for the annual pass versus outside people.
Hey, Sarah, would it make sense from a couple different perspectives, but one being the enforcement? would it make sense to go to just one pass? And that would be a Lake Stevens annual pass. And these others that are accepted would need to show that, for example, a disabled veteran shows they have this pass and they get a free Lake Stevens pass. That way, the only pass you see is a Lake Stevens pass instead of, I don't know if we take that one, or I don't know if we take this one. Is that today? Is that tomorrow? Right? Like it's one pass. The other ones are exempted, free. You get a free one if you have these ones. Would
Are
that,
you speaking of the fishing wildlife one?
what's that?
Are you speaking of the fishing?
Yeah, for
wildlife
example,
one?
the fish and wildlife one, the disabled veteran one, like those would still, you would still get a free
Right.
Lake Stevens one, but it brings it down to one pass instead of 4 or 5 that might be taken at North Cove and might be taken at Davies. We just know, okay, that's the Lake Stevens pass. We're good.
Gotcha. Yep.
But would that, but what's the administrative issues on that? Is that gonna, obviously they're gonna have to come in and, or maybe go online and show, hey, I've got this, and then I'm just trying to throw some jello on the wall here.
Certainly by limiting it to 3 annual passes versus the 5 that we have right now, that would be a huge help. The administrative problem with doing it as an all-in-one pass is simply, yes, we have to have the visitors come in. The problem with the Fish and Wildlife Pass, as well as well, if we get rid of the other 2, that's okay. The Fish and Wildlife Pass will expire. And so what happens there is we have to decide then, do we give them a full 12 months, or are we only giving it until their pass expires? And then our other problem is with the Veterans Lifetime Pass, they only have to get that one time from the state. So it would require them then once a year coming into our department to verify that it's still them, that they still have it, because our passes expire. It's certainly doable. I would say on average, quickly 5 minutes per pass. So I think right now we might be around 200 or 300 passes total throughout the year, but I'd have to look at those numbers.
On the veterans one, you could also have the Lake Stevens pass that says just, there's 2 of them really, but it's the same pass and just has the words not, never expires. And then they wouldn't have to come in annually to do that.
We would just have to print a second set of
No,
passes, these
You could
hanging
also just use
passes.
a little,
But there aren't that many, right?
yeah, there's not that many.
Yeah, the hanging passes do cost production about $1.20 a piece.
But for the veterans, I mean, I don't think we had a number, but you said there aren't that many of them currently.
We haven't been tracking them, but from word of mouth, we haven't seen very many.
Okay.
So one of the questions I have, what are we doing for enforcement on the $2 2-hour thing?
We are working with the police department right now on enforcement.
So that enforcement would fall under the
Park ranger.
community service officer.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have one, so, but that's what that would fall on.
So that's another piece of the discussion.
So I have a question on the Discover Pass, because I heard what you said, and I was thinking the same thing about, how many people outside the city have a Discover Pass and are coming in and using that. And I'm curious, what about the possibility of crediting that $30 against the $75 for an annual Lake Stevens parking pass? Because my thinking is, how many people from outside the city are going to be willing to spend another $45 on top of their Discover Pass to park here? I imagine the number of people who live outside the city but are coming in often enough to make that worthwhile is pretty small. And then that way we're also not all of a sudden penalizing our citizens who have spent $30 on a Discover Pass and are used to this free parking, and now all of a sudden they have to pay $105.
It's certainly an option and something that can be discussed. One of my concerns, of course, as a parks director, is it is expensive to run departments. When we look at the revenue from 2023 at $56,000 for both boat launches, and you look at how do we clean the boat launch 7 days a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, on top of all of the supplies to keep it open, the mowing, and then the deferred maintenance, things like putting in new boat launches. It's certainly a council decision as to what you want your cost recovery rate to be for the department, and balancing those revenues versus expenses and what you would like that to be.
Do we have a figure on how much the acceptance of the Discovery Pass is costing the city? I mean, do we track the number of passes being used?
We do not have staff resources and have never on a daily basis went out to count every vehicle and what types of passes that they are using.
That would be pretty time consuming.
Yeah. And so I guess my point is, if if we were able to credit that $30 to anyone who want to spend 45, it's still increasing revenue, maybe just not as much because they're not paying the full 75, but it would still be an increase. If we don't know how much it's costing us, I guess my thinking is I'd rather take a conservative approach rather than just all of a sudden anyone who lives in the city and is used to using their Discover Pass, now they have to spend an extra $75. That's kind of my thinking.
I guess my counter to that is like, I've never been to a other city or county that allows a Discover Pass. I always have to buy something for that city or that county. And so I wouldn't want Lake Stevens to be like, hey, we're going to be the ones that are taking that on and we're going to be the trendsetter and saying, hey, you can use your Discover Pass. I mean, I'm all for the Discover Pass and use it for the state passes, but if I want to go to a national park, I got to get a national pass. So I just don't.
Yeah.
And I guess I agree with the cost of maintenance costs. I mean, I go in and see the vandalism that happens. That's a lot of maintenance. And I see people here to Sarah's point, maintaining early hours, late hours. It all costs money. And to me, it's a true user fee instead of just like a general taxation for the people in general. But it's certainly something we can look at.
So I agree with you. What I'm proposing is not that we accept the Discover Pass wholesale. It's anybody that wants to buy the annual parking pass for $75 and has a Discover Pass can come and say, hey, I've already bought this. Can you knock $30 off the price? They pay $45 and get the annual parking pass, because my thinking is the number of people who are going to do that, or the group of people who are going to do that, are either ones who live in the city or maybe a small percentage who live outside but come in and use the parking facilities often enough that it's worth their while. Most people who are just getting a free ride on Discover Pass are going to be like, an extra $45, I'm not paying that. And
So I could understand that if that was our citizens, if we gave the citizens that $30 discount.
well, and Greg, if we can limit it to citizens of the city, then, that's address verification or something, I'm fine with that too.
I would say every time I go to Everett to launch a boat for fishing and stuff, people don't even blink. They don't even blink at it because they understand parking the boat, taking care of the launch and doing that. I mean, I hear people complain every once in a while, but everyone's like, the fee is what it is, in order for us to keep a launch. That's kind of where it's at. So
But I would get rid of the Discover Pass because there's no revenue for us on it.
Yeah, the county, I'm with Marcus, and if it were something to be considered, it'd certainly be something reserved only for our residents, consistent with that input we got from the citizen about providing some value, additional value or something for our citizens.
And that's exactly what I was going with. But if we could just cut right to the chase and limit it to citizens specifically, then I'm fine with that too.
Our staff trying to figure that all out. I mean, you're talking $30, it probably costs us a little bit more than $30 just for them to take care of that.
And one of the questions would also be, is it inside city limits or is it anybody with a Lake Stevens address? Because those are two different things and makes it a little harder for us to validate.
It's Lake Stevens taxpayers, because Lake Stevens goes all the way up to Arlington, Lake Stevens addresses, so.
Correct. So we would have to look at a validation system in order to make that quick and easy. It's something that I can certainly look into and report back on.
Okay, thank you.
But
Absolutely.
I do concur with Kim's point, though, that we anything we do to minimize the staff involvement and their time, because it's valuable, and we don't want to administratively burden them.
No, I agree with that. And I'm all for doing it effectively. The idea of all of a sudden, our citizens who've enjoyed this feature, their Discover Pass, now all of a sudden they're getting slapped with an extra $75. I'd like to avoid that if I can.
Yeah, I get that. I do. But there's a balance, like everything we do here there's a balance and we got to figure that out. Most of it's around money.
So what I've heard tonight is it sounds like the council supports, unless anybody wants to speak up and say they don't, initiating the conversation with Snohomish County about eliminating that pass at Davies, and then looking at also eliminating the Discover Pass. One of the questions with those would be, how long notice do we want to give? What I put in this presentation is that I would recommend giving a 2-month notice on the Discover Pass. And then working with Snohomish County on what they would think was acceptable for a notice period. We could also make it effective immediately.
So what's the discussion we have to have with Snohomish County?
Because of the agreement, when we took Davies Beach from Snohomish County, it is in writing in the agreement that we will continue to accept the Snohomish County pass until it's mutually agreed upon. And so we need to approach Snohomish County and tell them that we, at this point, would like to no longer honor their passes And if they want us to continue to honor their passes, then I would approach them about some kind of revenue share off of their passes
Yeah.
to keep that revenue coming in.
Okay.
So it's certainly a conversation I can open.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess my addition, I would just like to reiterate, I would be interested in a credit, some kind of credit option if it's available for the Discover Pass and what that could look like. So.
Okay. I'll definitely look into those options with admin costs for both resident discounts as well as honoring a Discover one and bring that back around.
Thank you. And if you determine that the resident thing is easier, then we can scrap the Discover Pass part.
Okay. Thank you.
Gary, do you have anything? Or Angie?
No, thank you. This has been a good discussion. I agree. It's not an easy solution. Sarah, thanks for being willing to go back and get some additional information. I think that'll be helpful.
Absolutely.
Nothing.
All right, great. Thank
Nothing.
you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Gary. Good stuff, Sarah. Let's move to Olin. Let's talk the Weir.
Slideshow. Good. And I think we're doing all right now. Okay. Okay. Good evening, council. Presenting on the Weir, the Lake Stevens Weir. My name's Olin Anderson, Surface Water Coordinator with the Public Works Department. And tonight's presentation is on the status of the Weir replacement, lake level management issues, and the overall. As you may know, the Weir is a water control structure located at the outlet of the lake. And it was a topic of a lot of work and presentations that have been made here, including one last July 2nd. We had came along with all our research and progress for designing a structure to replace the existing Weir, and had results from a meeting and had a preferred option to discuss. We had some questions that came up during a meeting. And tonight we're going to have a recommendation for the channel that flows out of it. And we're ready to pivot also the project to a different emphasis. So I wanted to talk about that with you tonight. So again, June 13th, we had a workshop meeting with our stakeholders. It was the Tulalip Tribes, Fish and Wildlife, Facet, our consultants in the city, verify what realistic project could we build for the controlling the Weir and the lake level. And there was a lot of data presented, and I'm not even going to go into these charts. It's just to show you. There was a lot of data presented. And we got into the nuts and bolts and came out with some pretty clear outcomes. So of all the options that we had for solving the lake control issues, the agencies seem to prefer a fixed elevation berm, a given level all year round. This would allow certain fish to manage the lake in a reasonable means and be relatively cost effective. So this is what the agencies were leaning us towards doing. But at the same time, the discussion got, so what authority does the city have to control lake levels? And that was a surprise to us to think about. This raised some follow-up questions that we had to look into. Like, what is this authority? Who grants it? What permits do you get for holding lake elevation? Do we have a permit? How could it be not okay to operate the Weir? We've been doing this for a long, long time. And there is this Weir. Why does it exist? Why was it permitted? So summer, we went through the research of what happened and what was going on, especially when we talked to the old drainage district manager, Brent Kirk. So what we learned is the lake level's been managed probably since the mill times, informally, oftentimes putting logs in the channel and blocking it up. And somewhere around 1998, the Drainage Improvement District, which had been around for quite a while, number 8, Snohomish County, decided to build this weir. This is something that they do normally, any per state law, RCW Title 85. So the permits were issued, a JARPA, which is a Joint Aquatic Resource Permit application, was issued by the Corps and Ecology, with Fish and Wildlife being involved. And Fish and Wildlife also issued permits that were for the operation of the weir, and we had copies of those permits in our research. So the city took over the drainage district. And what we understand today, after some discussion with Greg Rubistello and his team, to find out like what is this that we're doing? Well, we took over the district, and so we're running the weir as a drainage district. And if we manage the lake levels using the weir, we're doing the same thing that was previously done. And so all these are precedent that this is basically a fine process. But when we changed this weir, we learned we're going to be putting in a new structure. Any of them would basically trigger off a permit process. And so the permit process would look again like a JARPA being issued. Again, that would need ecology to approve. But we learned ecology would be authorized to justify this. It would need to know that this is a reservoir, and it needed its own reservoir permit. And then to have that reservoir permit, we needed to have a legal definition from the State Superior Court called a lake adjudication of water rights. So the lake would need an adjudication. So again, getting into the nuts and bolts about this, and Greg's team in Wenatchee, who do water rights, was really helpful at this. So ecology issues reservoir permits. The legal basis for a reservoir permit is the water rights. Water rights are under Title RCW 90. And this was something that we had looked into 10 years ago to gain water rights, or to have a reservoir permit. But it has been known since, and we checked with ecology, they didn't see one on the records. So we learned that if we're going to get adjudication, it could take a while. It could take a short while, but it's still going to take a while. 2 years if it's a slam dunk, and there's some contentious issues over in Eastern Washington that's taken 30+ years to get done. It's possible there is a water right, and we could go research the files in Everett and maybe find it. It may not be there. But we also need to consider that if we go through the process of adjudication, you don't know the outcome. You hope that all the players involved, the lake owners, people using the lake, would all share a similar opinion as you, but that's not a guarantee. So our recommended action, first of all, we think that we can move forward by just keeping the weir going and not getting involved with an adjudication process immediately to start rebuilding it. So this is a straightforward thing. We can get working on other things that need to get done. And it doesn't mean we don't have to do the adjudication. We're just going to not make that the top priority, the immediate critical path. Our recommended action then also is to pivot the project. And this is what we're thinking we're going to be doing, because it makes the most sense to go to the lowest leg of the outlet channel, which is over along Hartford Drive over to Catherine Creek, and reconstruct it out in the floodplain. What this does is a number of things, but primarily it keeps us on the path of addressing flood reduction, fish passage, habitat, and other public benefits. So to get into some of the details of what these benefits are, it'll increase the floodplain capacity. It'll provide more access for fish to habit and grow, and maybe even have rearing habitat. There's a problem with fish passage at Catherine Creek on Hartford Drive, which is actually an opportunity for funding. and worthwhile getting restored with a larger facility than the culverts that are in place. There's aesthetic improvements. It could be open water, open space. Potential for increased right of way on Hartford Drive when we decommission the old channel, and a safer trail. And we do know that we have support from all the agencies and our friendly tribe neighbors. They've taken an interest in seeing these things move forward. Catherine Creek is a priority watershed for them. They want to see that fish barrier removed. And they really enjoy the idea of things getting better all the way to the lake. And we have some funding available. So key takeaways from tonight's presentation. The Public Works Department has really felt what we need to do is pivot the project to focus on Lower Stevens Creek. And we're ready to move forward with this. Restoring Lower Stevens Creek will do all these things that we want it to do. But we can still operate the weir, have the lake level, and monitor the infrastructure, and look at options we could have to make this better too. So the current status is we have already completed 10% conceptual design of this Lower Stevens Creek reach, including the bridges and alignment. We've had coordination and support with the tribes and agencies on this topic. We've acquired 5 parcels on Hartford Drive with a grant that was awarded last year. And we have this outstanding grant ready to be spent from EPA, which can be spent towards it. It's a community grant program for $500,000.
What's the timeline on that grant?
Yeah, it's the earmark grant we got from the congressional.
Usually they have like timelines that they need to be spent by.
It's actually a wide open timeline on this.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one we've had for 2 years.
For a couple of years, and it's a grant that we need to apply for, but it's earmark funding, so we just need to apply for it to access it. But there is no expiration date at this time on it.
Is there a match with it at all?
There's no match.
Great.
It's just the 500.
And then to mention one more thing is we've applied for another 800 for the culvert replacement from a federal grant program. We had a lot of congressional support and tribal support for that grant. We feel very strong about it. It's our second application. We've heard that almost everybody gets rejected on their first application, so it's a good sign that we're in a good shape to get a grant award on this Catherine Creek culvert. Looking at some of the images of what these completed items are, we got a plan over in the left corner here. This is an overview plan that shows areas where the 10% design was completed. The orange area is the focus area for the reach that we'd be working on with the current phase, and then maybe advancing the other reaches down to the south, and also looking again at the weir when it's appropriate. Over to the right with the yellow highlight is the parcels that we've acquired. And we have a structure that's had its septic tank decommissioned today and about ready to take the structure down hopefully within a week. So thank you very much. Shannon and I really appreciate your attention, and look forward to your questions, and anything else, let me know.
So just something's niggling at the end of my back of my mind. FHWA funds. PSRC just came out with a report that FHWA funds are starting to change away from things like culvert replacements and things like that to climate change and can't remember what the other thing is. But if we're going to jump on FHWA funds for this, we probably need to get that in ASAP. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what we're talking about at PSRC.
I could see that. Yeah, the FHWA was the agency for the culvert. We have other grants that we've been awarded that include a climate action plan and climate change adaptation. Building a a wider floodplain on the stream channel is an excellent action to move forward with a climate preparation. Over, you know, increased heavy rains in the winters, it'll help deal with that issue.
So you're correct on that.
It'd
One of
be
the
a-
one of
it'd
the
be a
things they're doing is
well-suited
looking
project
at,
for that.
they're looking at those kinds of things. If you, you know, to hit the right points, you have to say the right words.
Right.
And so if you can bring our climate management plan into this and attach it to that, and then I can't remember what the other one is, dang it.
Yeah.
I think it's DEI stuff. If you can get it, and safety. The other one is safety. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can get those three,
Emergency management.
if you can get three of those things in there, then our grants are going to go much better than they have in the past.
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch of work to get done, and it seems like every other month we hear another grant opportunity. So the urge is to try to get this moving forward as fast as possible. Currently in the works right now is a project plan for this overall Stevens Creek project, of which this is probably the most important phase of it then right now. But the Weir work had led into that, and the other 10% design work, but also the engagement we had with the tribes and the agencies led us to understand that we need to expand a little bit more and look at everything and kind of reevaluate each phase as time comes on and the information gets better. The research project that we did this summer brought up some really interesting information about the history of this. I mean, the outlet channel in the 1950s and the study that was done by UW was looked at for relieving flood pressure in downtown. They wanted to decommission the old outlet ditch and go to the old stream channel. And so this idea has been kicking around for generations, and we're hoping to be the generation to kick it off and get it going. So.
Good.
One of the things I'll note too that Olin shared, there is this $500,000 that's available to us now to start this project. There's some savings in the current contract that we have for the Weir design, and we're hoping that, coupled with some preliminary work that was done on the Catherine Creek Hartford crossing by Sound Salmon Solutions under an RCO grant several years ago, is enough money to really get us going and start looking at design so that we can be more successful for some of these grant opportunities, and then possibly even getting us close enough to just look for construction money after that. And as Olin mentioned, we have been working closely with the tribes, and part of the project plan that he's working on is really a way for us to kind of outreach with the tribes and for them to utilize our projects and put them into larger funding packages.
So
So the other thing I heard, I think it was at SCC, is that the tribes has culvert money that they are putting into different projects, and it's not coming from the feds, it's actually coming from inside the tribes. I heard that too.
Yeah, they've collected funds for culvert replacements on upper portions of Catherine Creek and are advancing that to be open all the way to Lake Cassidy. So if a bigger surge of salmon are going up that way, then we'll probably also have a bigger fork heading into the lake. And so anyway, they definitely have talked about partnering with us in the past, recent past. But, you know, until we make some more progress, I think, and get some other things lined up, you know, they're waiting for the sign that we're going in the direction that, you know, choice.
So Shannon, what's our next step here? Do you need to get an engineering contract going to spend this 500 plus? Where are we at?
Yeah, so what we're proposing, the next step is really council support and us pivoting the project, leaving the Weir as is, maintaining the Weir as is, as the presumed authority of the drainage district, monitor the infrastructure, and really refocus on the Lower Stevens Creek realignment. Our next step to get that project going is to work with our EPA community grant members and start the application process to unlock that 500,000 and then enter into a design contract.
Let's get
I
on.
support that.
All right, any other questions for Olin? Shannon?
I just have
Yeah.
one comment. So as far as it came up with the last time we discussed this, I support the city's ability to maintain a consistent water level. Because if we have a fixed option, and we limit the ability depending on the volume of rain and other things that we have. Because I know we saw the slide that said averages, but that doesn't really take into account the peaks and valleys and the impact that that's going to have on all the structures around the lake. The impact of potentially flooding if we have a set level and just say, hey, that's what it's at, and we're kind of limited by that. So hopefully we can have some flexibility in our determination, because I have the three different options that are mentioned there, fixed weir being one of them.
Yeah, and really at this time, for us to really move forward with any of those, we would need to have the authority to actually regulate the lake level. And to have that authority, it's through the process that Olin outlined with the Department of Ecology, and it's under a reservoir permit. There are water rights that play into it and also beneficial uses. And so if it's determined what the beneficial use is for the city, then it goes through that adjudication process, and it's really a court order that then allows us to regulate the water levels in the lake. And then typically the process is that authority is given to ecology, and then ecology delegates the authority to the city to do it. And so it opens up a much bigger question when we start to say, well, we'd like to manage the different levels, and we really need to come up with a plan on how we would go about that as far as this authority framework that's set up to do that.
With I will add that the easier thing to do is nothing. Because we can keep running the weir with lake levels as we wish right now. So as long as the weir is functional enough and the road is safe enough, that's the easy and most efficient solution. But we should be thinking about it. We should be thinking about this other path.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, good stuff. Appreciate it. I adjourn this meeting.
All right.